Okay, we can. Well, thank you guys for meeting with us this morning. I know it's a crazy time of year, and all of us are, I've got SAP all over my desk. It's a good thing you can't see it. So that's kind of where we all are, and I appreciate you taking time out to visit with us for a little while on this very, very important committee. The first thing I want to do is remind you that we are broadcasting live, and this is on YouTube, where it's very public. So as you go through this meeting, if you need to, if your attention needs to be in your office for just a few seconds, please go ahead and turn your camera off and make sure your mic is muted. Take care of what you need to take care of and jump back in. We do ask that everyone mute their mics when they first come on, and I think that's all done. And so with a little bit of housekeeping that we had to do already out of the way, let's get started. The first thing I would like for you to do is introduce yourself and tell us the institution you're with. And let's see, and I'm going to use this as a roll call as well. So I'll start with me. My name is Denise Welch, and I am the chair, and I am with Panola College. Ed?
Ed Cressley. I'm at Angelo State University, and I served last year as the chair. So, Denise, glad you're sitting in that seat now.
Deshay?
Good morning. I am Deshay Reed. Hopefully this camera will eventually turn on during this meeting, but I serve as the agency's representative. I've been with the coordinating board for 6 years. I am the senior director of financial aid services.
Robert?
Hey, good morning. Robert Marino, Dean of Financial Aid at Central College. I have served in this committee for, this is going to be my 6th year.
Cecilia?
I am Cecilia Jones, Director of Financial Aid at Jarvis Christian College, new to the committee this year.
Stephen?
Hi, I'm Stephen Peterson with the Blinn College District.
Jackie?
Jackie Adler. I'm with Texas State Technical College, and this is my 1st year to serve.
Stephen? Kevin? I see her face. Are you there? Tavian Sides?
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm Tavian Sides. I'm with Western Texas College, and I'm the Director of Financial Aid here.
Joseph?
Hello, my name is Joseph Ruiz, and I'm the Director of Financial Aid Services at Del Mar College, and this is my 1st year to serve.
Thomas?
Hi, I'm Thomas Ratliff, Director of Student Financial Services at Abilene Christian University, and I've been on the committee for a couple of years now.
Victoria?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Victoria Chen, Director of Financial Aid at TCU.
Millette?
Millette Leaf Green, Director of Financial Aid, UT Southwestern Medical Center in Dallas.
Rochelle?
Hi, Rochelle Garrett, Director of Financial Aid at Stephen F. Austin University.
Joy?
Good morning, everyone. Joy Thomas, Director of Student Financial Aid, Prairie View A&M University.
Bridget?
Good morning, Bridget Ingram. I'm Director of Financial Aid here at Texas A&M, and we have a little extra craziness today in our office. We're moving out of this building, so if there's some interruptions from me, we've been in this building, I think, 30, 40 years. I've been here 17 years. So it's a crazy time right now where lots of people moving. So
Awesome. Merry Christmas. Dee Dee?
Good morning, Dee Dee Gonzalez from Texas State University.
Holly?
Good morning. I'm Holly Nolan. I serve from University of Houston, Clear Lake.
Arnold?
Good morning, everybody. My name's Arnold Trejo, and I'm Executive Director of Financial Aid and Scholarships at the University of Texas, San Antonio.
Ben?
Good morning. Ben Boland, Principal at Arlington College and Career High School, Arlington ISD.
Shauna?
Hi, Shauna Norton, Director of Social and Emotional Services for the Wichita Falls Independent School District.
Jace?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jace Gugia. I'm the student rep, and I'm also a PhD student at the University of Texas at Austin.
Sal?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sal Ramirez. I'm the College and Career Readiness Coordinator at Trans Mountain Early College High School in El Paso, Texas.
And Gilbert?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Gilbert Savala, Vice President of Education and Talent Development at the Austin Chamber of Commerce.
Well, thank you very, very much. We have 100% attendance today, and we do appreciate you being with us as we go through our Financial Aid Committee meeting this morning. The first item on the agenda is the consideration of the approval for minutes from the meeting held on September 2nd. You do have the minutes in your packet. I hope all of you have had a chance to look over those. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, we will approve the minutes from the meeting from September 2nd. Our next item on the agenda is an update from Deshay. Deshay?
This one is for the prior FAAC business, if there were any items, and we did not have any prior business. So I don't have anything to report on this particular agenda item.
Thank you. Has Chad joined us yet? I can't see.
Yes, I have.
Oh, thank you. Good morning, Chad. Thank you so much for being with us. You wanted to discuss with us some financial aid strategy.
Yes, and I believe Jody's going to be bringing up my slide deck. So I wanted to bring you up to speed on some work that's going on within the agency in terms, sorry, I'm trying to see where things stand, in terms of work that we're doing to really try to look at financial aid and how we're able to best move forward with this. Jody, would it be helpful if I shared? It looks like, or at least on my screen, I'm seeing this. Well, maybe I should ask you all, are you all able to see the slide deck?
It's really very small.
Yeah, we're getting an interesting replication going on.
Jody, they're seeing the YouTube display.
Okay, I'm not sure what's happening here. Let me try this one more time, Charles. I'm so sorry.
Oh, I could. Would it be easier if I just displayed it?
Maybe so. There's some technical things happening on my end as well.
Great. Let me just request control there, and I'll pull this up. 1 second. Bear with me. Files, presentation. Browser. Let me just get this launched and we'll be good to go. Oh, my request for control was denied. That's interesting. Let's see if it still worked, though. Go. How's that for everyone? Are you able to see now? Thank you for your patience. So,
Yes,
like I said, wanted to talk to you about some of the strategic initiatives we have going on related to financial aid here at the agency. We have 3 different things that are going on that are part of the work that we're able to do based on the funding we've received through the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund. And the biggest of those pieces is a pilot program that we're going to be doing for Texas transfer grants. This funding that we're receiving from through the GEAR Fund, gives us a unique opportunity. It is one-time funding. So this isn't a program that's been, put into statute by the legislature for, multiple years. It's a one-time chance for us to explore some different things that we might not be able to get to look at normally through our financial aid programs. So we want to pilot some of these novel and innovative approaches to provide support. For one of the programs is the Texas Transfer Grant Program, and the idea is to provide portable need-based aid to high-achieving transfer students who are low income to help mitigate financial barriers to vertical transfer. And wanted to break that down a bit for you as to what that means. Portable means that it's going to be a bit different than the programs that the state usually does. THECB will actually be identifying the recipients as opposed to our usual approach of providing block grants to institutions. And so we'll be working with an external agency who's going to be executing the randomized control trial to be able to review and select the recipients for that. Need-based aid, high achieving, we're going to be looking at low-income students based on financial information that we have at the agency. We'll also be looking at, we're currently in the process of figuring out the specifics of how exactly are we defining low income. Are we going to use an EFC? Are we going to use income level information? We're also working to define exactly what we mean by high achieving. Does it have to do with the, GPA, the number of credits, etc.? We are looking at mitigating financial barriers to vertical transfer. So this is very specifically looking at individuals who are transferring from a 2-year institution to a 4-year institution. So it is a select group. One of the things I'll acknowledge up front is that this is a pilot program. It's a one-time, novel, innovative approach. This isn't in any way saying this is how all aid for transfer students should be accomplished. We're acknowledging we have a small pot of money. And we want to look at something that we can execute in a short period of time because these GEAR funds need to be expended by October. And so we will be working on identifying the group of individuals. It will be a $5,000 scholarship that will be provided to individuals to be able to use during the fall semester. Because it's got the federal limitation on when the money needs to be spent, we're not able to do a usual fall-spring award because the money has to actually hit the student account before the end of October. We're currently in the midst of finalizing our contract with the external organization who's going to be doing the research piece of this for the randomized control trial. Once that's done, we're going to begin in earnest on the actual design of how are we defining high achieving, low income, who are the recipients, so that we can work to design a program that as an agency, we can let institutions know here are individuals who are eligible for this program, who are going to be receiving this. And we'll do that based on who the individuals have indicated on their FAFSA or their Apply Texas that they have an interest in those institutions. Still a lot to figure out in terms of the exacts of how the information is going to flow and how we're going to get funding dispersed, and so that you all can, so that eligible institutions can disperse it onto the student accounts in time. So there'll be more to come, but I wanted to let you know that this was coming, and also give everyone the heads up that, again, this is a, small pilot research project, as opposed to a large scale program that we're looking to implement as is. This is just to try to test some pieces to see how it could inform what should things look like for transfer students. Another item we're looking at is just kind of the, for lack of a better way to put it, the philosophy of financial aid, and really thinking about how do we approach financial aid within the agency. The agency is working on a strategic architecture to really look at what are the priorities that need to be focused on within the agency in order to foster the skills and spur the innovation vital to the Texas economy. And so one of those items is specifically a financial aid strategic priority. And we've just recently launched this effort, so I don't have answers to questions like exactly what are we going to do. This is more, we're starting the process. And one of the things that I've been mentioning that I'm very excited about is we're very focused on an integrated agency approach to the work that we're going to do. So really trying to think about what are all the different ways that the agency touches financial aid, whether it be from an advising standpoint, whether it be from the traditional programs that are run through student financial aid programs, whether it be other programs that are done through our request for application or the like, where financial aid is an allowable expense within those programs. But really thinking about kind of three major areas. One, being thinking about student-centered design and kind of the policy implications of our financial aid. Another being related to kind of the intentional engagement or the information that we provide regarding financial aid, advising, etc. And then the third being targeted financial aid. So the specific programs and, are all of these things really pointing towards a common goal, and looking at how we can best consider the various educational and workforce transition points that occur and how financial aid can influence those items. So we're beginning the work on that. We do intend to have opportunities for engagement from the financial aid community. Again, we've just started, so I don't have the specifics on how and when that's exactly going to happen, but that is definitely on our radar as to how we can engage. And then finally is our technological infrastructure. We are working to try to bring together all the different ways that we administer our aid programs. So, for Texas grants, you do one way to ask for some money. If you all participate in the educational aid exemption program, it's another way of asking for money. If you're in the work study mentorship program, it's another portal that you have to go in to provide certain reports. We have loan repayment programs. We have the Texas Armed Services Scholarship Program, which is yet another way. Really looking to try to think of how can we best serve our stakeholders, and how can we serve students? how can we serve financial aid administrators, and working to really challenge our conventional thinking, not trying to just recreate what we currently do, but in a new platform, but really trying to think of how can we improve the administration of financial aid? How can we make it easier, quite selfishly, for ourselves internally, so it doesn't take, 27 clicks in 5 different systems to get a payment out to you? How can we, do those kind of things? And also for you, so that, how can we make it easier for you to get the information you need and request the things that you need to request? One of the things that's really driving this is we need the ability to stand up programs more quickly. It became very apparent with the funding that came through with the GEAR money last year when we did the emergency educational grant. It's also very apparent every time the legislature passes a new program that our ability to quickly bring programs online is very limited, and we want to be able to have that functionality so that when we have an opportunity to do something new, we can quickly create the administrative support for that. And we're also thinking about this from an agency-wide approach. Not every financial aid program is run through student financial aid programs. If we're going to take an agency-wide approach to our strategy, we need to think about an agency-wide approach to our technology. And so those are pieces that we're also in the midst of trying to make some decisions over the next month as to exactly how we'll move forward with this. So we won't have all of our programs up and running by August for the next year, but we do hope to have a number of them on the new platform, and then continue to move additional items onto the new platform. So really, it's about getting some money into the hands of students through a very specific randomized control trial for the Texas Transfer Grant. It's about thinking about overall, what are we looking to achieve with our financial aid programs, and how do we work as an organization internally and externally to drive towards the same target. And then when it comes down to the nitty-gritty of how do we make it happen? How do we actually get money out into the hands of institutions to get it into the hands of students? So that's some of the work that we're doing right now. I wanted to make sure that you were aware of those things. Again, I don't have tons of detail right now because we're in the very early stages of this. But when we are ready to be able to start having deeper conversations, didn't want this to be a surprise to people. Are there any questions that I can answer about any of these 3 items? Dee Dee.
Hi. I know you don't have details, but is there an estimated rough time frame for when institutions would know about the potentially eligible Texas grant transfer students in case we needed to adjust aid packages?
Yes. A very rough timeline is that we're looking to identify the students in January, so next month, so that we can let institutions know in February, so that way you'll have, because to us, a key piece is not just telling the students, but telling institutions as well, so that students don't assume that it's their Texas Transfer Grant plus the financial aid package that they receive from you. We realize you might need to, it could turn a subsidized loan into an unsubsidized loan or other things like that. Right. So that's the goal. And we're taking a very unique approach to this, as opposed to kind of a standard, because it is a small pilot program. We're actually looking at current year information to identify who the recipients are going to be, and then they'll be eligible for this regardless of whether their FAFSA looks different for next year or not. They'll still be eligible for this program. Not a typical way of doing things, but since we need to get that information out quickly, and we need to do this in a way that we can assure getting all the money spent in time. We're trying this novel approach to things. So hopefully our target by the end of February.
Okay, just to clarify one thing you just said, you're looking at current, so awards year 22, correct? And you said it didn't matter what the next year's 23 FAFSA looks like.
Yep. And again, we will get details out to you. Like, we're not just going to send you a list and say, hey, good luck. We'll have a whole fact sheet and we'll have everything explaining out to you. But basically, when we tell you that this person is a recipient, this person is a recipient. So pretty much we'll have done all of the background work. And if they enroll, then, they'll be able to have these funds.
So even if they don't have need in the upcoming year, they have need now, they don't have need, we're going to disperse it anyway.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Again, novel, innovative, unique approach. Not saying that this is how all aid programs should be run in any way, shape, or form. I'm saying we got $8 million that we have an opportunity to do a randomized control trial, and we're going to try something. So,
Thank you.
Gilbert.
Sorry.
There we go.
So 2 questions. One, do you all have an external research partner that you've already identified, or are you still looking at who the research partner might be, or are you handling the randomized trial internally?
We have.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me just go ahead and answer that. We are actually in the final stages of contract negotiation with an external research partner. So.
Okay. And then the second is, will the funding for the pilot that's targeted to the student only support initial transfer, or will the funding follow the student through degree completion?
This is a one-time program. It's a one lump sum $5,000 award for the fall of 2022. So again, set of money that we have, limited time to use it, novel, innovative approach. In no way am I saying that we think that giving a transfer student $5,000 for one semester suddenly solves the entire transfer issue. It's just what can we build within the time constraints and funding that we have available.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Robert.
So you said this is for vertical transfer. So I'm assuming that the student will receive the funding after they transfer to the 4-year university. So community college are not going to receive the funding for the student?
Correct. This will be for their enrollment at a 4-year institution.
Okay.
Ben.
Hey, Chad, do you know approximately how many will be awarded or how much money is in the entire pot?
Let me get my adding machine and figure that out.
1,600.
Thank you very much. He can hit his keys better. Yep, about 1,600 students will get funded through this program. And a piece that I want to acknowledge, this comes from discussions that I've had with you all. We have visited this concept many times on the fact that the Texas Transfer Grant doesn't really reach the transfer population eligibility-wise. When we look at the percentage of students who are eligible for Texas transfer, for Texas grant via the transfer pathways, it is a single digits in terms of the percentage of students who are actually funded. A lot of that is due to the statutory requirements related to the priority model, et cetera. So there is a big chunk of individuals out there that we know don't get funded through the Texas grant. And this isn't specifically just for Texas grant eligible individuals. I'm just kind of using that as an example. We also realize that funding 1,600 students still doesn't come close to addressing the overall financial funding that would be needed to support transfers. This is the pot we have available, and so we are going to work with this accordingly. Ed.
Yeah, just I'm thinking about this transfer population. Is it assuming these students are graduating with an associate degree or 2 years at the community college and then coming, or is it any student who is wanting to transfer to another university?
It's vertical transfer, so it doesn't have, and I'm kind of sorry I used Texas Grant as an example, so don't think about the Texas Grant transfer eligibility. It's not tied to that in any way. It's not that you have to be eligible for a transfer grant, but you didn't get it. So associate degree or the whole 24 credits with a 2.5, that's not related to this program. This is individuals who are transferring from a 2-year institution to a 4-year institution. So, and very admittedly, this is very focused on people who are in a 2-year institution this year, transferring to a 4-year institution next year. It doesn't attempt to get into the concept of people who have done work at a 2-year and aren't currently enrolled and now are looking to transfer. We realize that, you know, the whole transfer concept is a very large concept, and this is a small little piece that we're doing a research study on.
Right. And maybe getting more into it, but just how we are identifying the group. But I'm assuming it's a student who is currently enrolled at a community college and through Apply Texas has applied to a 4-year public university. I mean, that might potentially be how you identify.
That might potentially be how we identify. As I mentioned, we're in the final stages of finalizing our contract with the research organization. Once we have that contract, then we will be working with the research organization to identify the specific way that we will select, that they will select participants for the program. Any other questions? I'll be honest, I thought the questions were going to be about the strategy work as opposed to the randomized control trial work. So guess I shouldn't try to guess these things in the future. Gilbert? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute, Gilbert.
Sorry about that. So I did have a question about the strategy piece and philosophy aspect that you mentioned as regards aid. Are you all potentially considering including funding for career training, workforce certification programs that have labor market demand? Would that be a consideration in this discussion?
What I would say to that is we're considering all sorts of concepts. Kind of, you took it a step further than we are even in our thought process. The strategic architecture isn't about funding. Like, it isn't about we're going to request $8 million to do this or $100 million to do that. It's more thinking about, okay, what are the things we're looking to try to influence with financial aid? What are the educational workforce transitions? You know, what, as we have opportunities, how do we want to make sure that these opportunities are all targeted towards the goals? So in terms of the concept of what you've said of, more of the career or technical piece, that's within the scope of the discussion. In terms of the specifics, I want to clarify, we've been talking about this measured in weeks, not months or years. Like, we just started this whole strategic architecture for the financial aid. So, to say, this is what we're going to be focusing on. We want to achieve this, and we're going to go ask the legislature for this. We are definitely not at that level right now. We're just we just recently came up with the slide that you see in terms of kind of guiding our direction and guiding our conversation. But I would say that if it's an educational or workforce transition item, it's part of the discussion that we'll be having, and helping us. One of the things I read, it was probably in a NASFA document or something along the way, but there was the comment made about federal aid that I think applies to state aid as well, and that's the fact that financial aid programs have historically been created piecemeal, as opposed to centered around a common strategy. Programs are created based on specific interests along the way. I think within the state, our exemption and waiver programs would be an example of lots of different interests, as opposed to a broad-based strategy around that. And so this is an opportunity to take a step back and really think about, from a strategic standpoint, what are we trying to accomplish, and how can we, assess ideas, and, as opportunities come up, how can we influence and nudge things in a way so that they strive towards the goal that we identify.
And is there a time frame for developing the strategy?
The course of 2022. That's kind of the time frame. It's definitely something I don't have a specific time frame for when we're going to have the different meetings and things like that at all, but it's a major initiative for the coming calendar year.
Thank you.
Robert.
Yeah, Jess, so understand the students will be selected randomly, but is there something we can do or to give our students, community college students, a greater chance of being selected, maybe like telling them to apply early to their transfer institution? Or
No, there's nothing from that standpoint, because, as I mentioned, we're going to be making the selection within the coming weeks, not months. And again, it's a randomized control trial. The selection process is going to be based on, a pool of eligible, but then randomized for the selection. So there's no specific thing that they could do right now to get themselves onto the selected side of a randomized control trial. So. Any other questions about transfer grants, financial aid strategy, or technological infrastructure? Well, thank you for letting me visit with you. I appreciate it. There will be more to come as we move forward in these different initiatives. So I'm sure that I'll be back again, and you'll be hearing from us in between. And with that, I will close my stuff out and turn things back over.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Great information. And I did not introduce you properly, and I do apologize for that. Dr. Charles Quintero-Paul is our Assistant Commissioner for the Coordinating Board, and we do appreciate your time this morning.
Glad to be here.
Okay, our next item on our agenda is our external relations with John Wyatt. We do not have a report this morning, but I would like to, for our new committee members, kind of discuss what this actually means, and then see if you have any items that we need to talk about related to external relations. External relations is the liaison for the agency to work with the governor, the legislatures, and other stakeholders, i.e. colleges and universities, to provide data and information on higher education. So that's kind of the definition of what the External Relations Committee does. And with that being said, are there any items for discussion that you can think of that would relate to external relations that we need to take to John to get some more information about?
Do you all have any thoughts on, as you know, we're going to eventually come back around to the legislative session, and that's one of the key items that John and his team usually comes forward to with the advisory committee on where the agency is and the initiatives, going forward. But if there are specific items that you want, John to look into, or any additional information, John said if you have additional questions as far as what's going on, definitely let us know, and we will take that back to him. So in the next meeting that we have, in the first meeting in 2022, we'll be able to get some update as to where the agency is, and then be able to talk about any of the concerns or questions that you all may have that you rose in this particular meeting. Gilbert, I did see your hand.
Yeah, I just had a question on whether or not this is looking at interim charges for the next legislative session, and if this committee has provided any guidance or input on those.
So we do have a separate subcommittee that does look at certain things within the Financial Aid Advisory Committee. The external relations is more with the agency bringing forth information and then taking from information from the committee for things to consider at an agency level. And so, yes, we are looking at different initiatives and ideas going forward into the next legislative session. And like I mentioned, we have a separate subcommittee that does take up different topics that the Financial Aid Advisory Committee would like to bring forward as recommendations for the agency to consider and think about. And those are the type of items that we have the external relations look into and have those kind of different conversations at different levels. So we haven't brought any new information for, let me say that, going into the next legislative session as of yet. And there will be later in the agenda item, Arnold Trejo, who is working with our association, our Texas Association with the Financial Aid Administrators, who will work together in partnership to come up with any kind of recommendations or any items that it's necessary to bring forward to the agency to look at and consider. But if there are certain things that you or anyone on the committee can think of that you have additional thoughts or questions that we should take back to the external relations group, then this definitely is an opportunity. If none necessarily at this meeting, you can always reach out to either Denise or myself, and we can bring those forward. So at the next meeting, those items can be addressed.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deshay. I appreciate that more detail on that. Dee Dee Gonzalez?
I would say, just as far as external relations and talking with stakeholders, just continue to point out the discrepancy between federal and state selective service requirements. I know y'all can't suggest change for that, but just, continue to point out that there is a disconnect there that's going to be difficult to navigate.
Very true. Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments about the external relations? Okay. Our next item on the agenda is the joint update for House Bill 3. Claudette Jinks, Director of College Readiness and Success, will give us this update. Claudette?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Claudette Jinks, Director of College Access in the Division of College Readiness and Success. I'd like to also include my colleague and content expert, Leah Smalley, who's also on the call now. She'll be available to help answer some questions that you all might have. I also wanted to take the time to recognize a colleague of ours, Laura DeGrush, who's been instrumental in the development of the online TASFA. So today, I'll be providing an update on the online TASFA and a little bit about the House Bill 3. We've been working jointly with an internal team to develop the online TASFA. During these FAAC meetings, Leah and I have tag teamed the presentations and updates, but today I'll be providing that update. We are happy to announce the development of the TASFA is well underway. The online TASFA has been created already. It's available to allow users to register, fill out, and save a TASFA for individuals to fill out and save a TASFA. It also is available to allow parents to review applications for those that are dependent applicants. And we expect the first launch is to be on track for October 2022, as we've mentioned in the past. The application will be rolling out and available in English, but we are working on providing the application in Spanish. We expect to share that in a second phase of work. Upcoming testing will really drive when that Spanish version may be available. So we wanted to let you know that we are working on that. During our meetings with the TASFA Advisory Committee, that committee early on, about a year ago, the committee had requested an easy process for both students and parents to sign the TASFA application. So the team is working with our general counsel to determine the appropriate electronic signature process. We are continually working with our marketing and communications division to help develop the look and feel of the TASFA website and creating a marketing and communications strategy to roll out the TASFA when it's available. The team is also working with the Apply Texas staff to link the online TASFA data to the counselor suite in the same format the existing FAFSA data is provided. For those of you who are unfamiliar, the Apply Texas system includes a counselor portal where counselors and authorized users can see student-level data for students at their high schools that they serve. The data includes the Apply Texas application information and FAFSA filing status. There are limited components of the data shared in the counselor suite, of the FAFSA data shared in the counselor suite, including if the student completed the application, the completion date, process date, and whether the student was selected for verification. All that information is pass-through information into the counselor suite, and that data is provided to our agency at the coordinating board through an agreement with the U.S. Department of Education. That data is transferred to the Apply Texas system Monday through Friday. So we're working with the Apply Texas team to incorporate the TASFA completion status. That will include the completion date and the completion status for the TASFA filers. So we're working on including those same components in the Apply Texas Counselor Suite. So counselors can use that information to help students. I just wanted to let you know, too, that the TEA has also identified the Apply Texas Counselor Suite as a tool that high schools can use as method of proof for students to meet that high school graduation requirement. For our K-12 partners, I also wanted to students, families, and district partners. So there's 4 different toolkits that are available. You can find that on the Texas OnCourse website. If you just Google Texas OnCourse, you'll be able to find the information under the new FAFSA graduation requirement. We will be meeting with the online TASFA work group before the holiday break to get additional feedback on a file layout. All institutions will have access to these TASFA data files that will be generated from the applications through MoveIt or some other SFTP, which is, for those that, like myself, did not know what this means, but it's a secure file transfer protocol. we always use these acronyms, so I wanted to clarify that. But our goal is to create and share a file layout for institutions to have some lead time and an opportunity to map out and automate the data transmission from the TASFA. Our plan is to get the file layout to institutions to share with institutional IT staff or vendors early next year, sometime hopefully in January, so that you have that lead time and are able to discuss with your vendors what the timeline might look like. We've been in discussion or consultation with vendors to discuss these timelines and discuss the file layout, mainly to get a sense of their process and what that file layout how it works with their systems. But each vendor has been different in our discussions, and they may need more lead time than others. So we want to get the file layout to everyone as soon as possible so that you have that information and can start working with vendors to automate that TASFA data transfer. And finally, we've been working internally with Chad on rules. They're being established for implementation of the online TASFA. They are expected to be published to the Texas Register, I believe, by January 28th, and will go for board approval on April 28th. And they're expected to be adopted late May. There is an agenda item to discuss the rules in greater detail later in the meeting. So we just wanted to give you that update, and that's all I have. Are there any questions that we can answer? Great. That's our update.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Gilbert, I think, has a question.
Sorry, I'm the new guy with all the questions. Apologies.
Hi, Gilbert.
Hi, Claudette. Did I miss a timeline for the actual rollout of the virtual TASFA?
The online test?
Projected, understanding that you guys are working on it, just out of curiosity, is there a projected?
Yes, we're expected to roll it out in the same aligning with the FAFSA. So it'll be October 1, 2022 is the expectation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Charles?
Deshay, I wondered if we might be able to look at that rule right now as part of this discussion while it's still fresh in everyone's mind. Is it possible to pull that up?
Yes, let me grab that and I'll share my screen.
Sorry to have just thrown that at you, but as I listened to Claudette, I thought that it might be.
While you pull it up, I can elaborate a little bit, Gilbert, just on overall rollout. There will be training that will happen with the institutions in advance. We're not going to go live on October 1 and say, hey, schools, here it is. So we'll be developing training on various levels, not only on the physical application and, kind of how to navigate through what the application will look like, but on the school side, how you'll receive the files and, contact information on technical concerns, anything like that. So we're working on that, which will start again in January. Our plan is to get the file layout to the school so you can start working on the mapping process to your system. But beyond that, you're going to need additional training. So that way, when you get questions from students, parents, or any other stakeholders, you'll have that kind of knowledge on the new look and feel.
Is everybody able to see my screen? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
This is the proposed rule that we have with the changes. I believe your handouts does have this updated version because we did have to update this particular version based on additional discussions on how to best provide clear detail as to adding TASFA into the subchapter A in the section 22.6. So go ahead. I'm sorry, Charles.
Just a piece that I wanted to mention as people look at this is please realize nothing is changing with the priority deadline, even though it's all underlined, which means new language. It's just that we've broken this one section into an A and a B. The A is the same priority deadline language that's always been there. The B is the new TASFA language. I didn't want anyone to get nervous thinking we were changing something related to the priority deadline.
Correct. So as you see here, it is broken into 4 areas and sections. The first one gives detail about what is TASFA as far as the application itself. The second section actually talks about this being the sole application that can be used as an online version, and that schools who are participating in the financial aid programs that are covered within Chapter 22 must accept that data. The third, Claudette, I wasn't sure if you were saying something because you were on mute. Okay. The third one is also in line with 2 as being the sole application, the agency's application. That is the printable version. So both using it as an online and as the paper application being that sole application for schools to use. And the fourth section is just describing that you do have an opportunity as a school to ask for any additional information to accompany either the online or the paper version.
And to say something I'm realizing just looking at this, people might not realize the file structure for submitting to, whoa, everything just changed. The file structure for submitting the Texas Register, if it's in brackets, it means it's being deleted. So if you're wondering what that bracketed stuff, consider that to be a strike through section.
So section B 1 through 4 has new information, with 4 being, as Charles described, beginning with academic year 2019-20, that is being struck through. So that would be a removal from this particular section. But all other language that is underlined, that is new language within the rule. Questions over at least the TASFA piece? Were there additional updates or items, Claudette or Leah, that you all had?
No, that's our update.
And we will go through the handout for the amendments later on. But again, like Charles said, it's probably best for you all to kind of see what it looked like since we're describing the online TASFA piece. But if you think of questions later on, when we get back to this particular agenda item, please feel free to speak up about them. I'll give you a little bit more time to kind of just process what each of those section details.
Thank you.
Thank you for indulging me, Deshay. I won't be here for when you have the conversation later. So I wanted to make sure that if people had questions, that I could be here, since admittedly I wrote it, and so I don't want to throw you under the bus and making you trying to answer questions.
Not a problem. Millette, I do see your hand though. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Deshay. I forgive my ignorance about Apply Texas because my kids don't use it. But to get to this new online TASFA, which I think is amazing, by the way, do you have to log in? Like, does a student have to create any kind of login? Okay, perfect.
No, it'll be a separate website, but it'll link to the Apply Texas application.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect.
Thank you for that question.
Any other questions? You do see another hand. Okay, Joseph?
So as far as how it's linked to the Applied Text application, and I apologize, and I know I stepped out really quick, but will it be much like a scholarship application is linked to Apply Texas, where they go, when they're actually filling out the application, they go out to complete the institution scholarship if they so choose to have it linked to that? Will the TASFA be something like that, or will it just give them the option when you get to the Apply Texas website to complete the TASFA application?
Sure, go ahead. No, go ahead.
So hopefully I'm going to answer the question correctly, but if a student is applying to go to college and they go through Apply Texas, they'll create their account, they'll go through all the questions. At the end, right now, it asks them, it links to the FAFSA. So it shoots them over to the FAFSA site. So it's going to do the same thing. It's going to have a link that will be available in Apply Texas that will then launch them over to a dedicated web page that is exclusive to the Texas online version of the TASFA. And then from there, they would create an online account. That way it's secure through our new developed online. So that's where that linkage comes in. But like Millette said, it's not only accessed through Apply Texas, because we have other folks, continuing students or students who don't use Apply Texas. We wanted to make sure that they had an access point so that they didn't have to go all the way through Apply Texas, because that would be confusing for those particular users. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes.
So clear? Okay.
And we're going to be working with that Apply Texas team to kind of map out what that looks like, at the end. So we'll be updating you all when that process is completed.
Okay, great discussion. Any more questions or comments for Claudette or Leah? Or Deshay? Okay. Thank you both very much for coming on and visiting with us about this. And we look forward to hearing further updates.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next agenda item is our data collection subcommittee, and that is chaired by Dee Dee Gonzalez. So Dee Dee, do you want to give us an update?
Sure. The data collection subcommittee met on November 10th. The first thing is we received that update on the online TASFA that Claudette just gave. We also talked about an update on the FAAC data modernization project. There are 5 distinct projects that comprise that overall modernization project: an admin portal, validation of data, protecting PII, THECB internal portal, and the submission process. All 5 projects are in the development phase, and there are 2 of them that are in the QA phase. The major component of this is the submission process, and it's expected that this will be scheduled for testing in January and February of this upcoming year. The idea was to have the data collection subcommittee test the submission process from start to finish using the fiscal year 22 data. The goal to go live with this new submission process for all schools is the summer of 2022. So that's pretty exciting about that. We're looking forward to that. The next update was on the 22 and 23 FAAC instruction manuals. The suggestion was they really would like to change that last submission deadline date. It seems like FAAC certifications that are extending into January are causing issues for the coordinating board. There are numerous data analysis delays. So the suggestion was to move it back to mid-November. There was some concern with the group that mid-November might be pushing it, especially for this year. So the suggestion was that at least for 22, we consider that first week of December and see how the FAAC modernization project helps speed up that submission of the FAACs. And if all goes well in that respect, then we could, consider pushing it back to mid-November. Let's see. We also talked about some additional data elements that will be added for fiscal year 23, and those are listed in the handout as well. We set our dates for the next year, upcoming committee meetings, and then received some updates from the coordinating board on the TRUE grants that were for 2-year institutions. Then we also got some updates on some recently released memos and upcoming memos, which are also included in the handout. And then last, they gave us some updates on staffing changes at the coordinating board. Deshay, have I missed anything?
Well covered. Well covered, Dee Dee.
Any questions on any of that? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dee Dee. Well, as a person that administers the financial aid database, I'm excited about the modernization because I always have issues. I'm sure it's operator error for the most part, but I am looking forward to having the new submission and the new modernization in that report. Any other comments or questions for Dee Dee? Okay, so I want to just talk a little bit about the legislative committee. Well, first of all, I'm going to Arnold. Are you with me? Arnold
Yes,
Trejo is our chair for this subcommittee, and while this committee does not, we do not send recommendations to the legislature. We are instrumental in giving feedback. So one of the things that with Ed's leadership last year, we talked about this committee maybe combining with the TASFA legislative committee, not in that it's this one in the same committee, but our representative or our subcommittee chair for this committee actually be a part of the TASFA legislative committee within that organization. That way the pulse of what the committee, what the community is seeking legislatively, we can have an inroad on that for this committee as well. And so I talked with Arnold, and he agreed that that would be a good strategy for us to go that route. Karen Kraus is the chair for the TASFA Legislative Committee this year, and spoke with her, and she definitely thought that was a great collaborative effort for all of us as well. Arnold, have you and Karen been able to visit since this kind of was established?
Yes, and thank you very much for introducing the structure and how we're restructuring. I think it's an excellent idea. It's in the spirit of collaboration and knowing what our committee is trying to accomplish on our side in terms of legislative issues, as well as what our association, what TASFA and Karen is doing. And I have reached out to Karen, and essentially they're also building, at this point, they're building their legislative committee on their side. Of course, as you mentioned, she is the chair of that group, and I believe that Chris Murr is the vice chair. So we know that the three of us are going to be serving in that capacity. But Karen did mention to me that they're still in transition in terms of getting the volunteers that volunteered on their side for the legislative committee. So they're forming at this point. And of course, we can we had some subcommittee members roll out this past year from our legislative subcommittee. So I'll be talking to you, Denise, and seek your guidance in terms of what kind of structure do we want to build here. But what I can say is that I'm very enthusiastic about this particular model that we're setting up because, again, it's collaboration, it's conduit, it's information, and to a certain extent, having a united front in terms of what we're trying to do with different bodies with perhaps same messages. And of course, we will look, certainly the collaboration between our financial aid advisory committee, legislative subcommittee with the TASFA legislative committee, but hopefully in the whole analysis of what we're trying to accomplish and identifying common themes, then I would see us, Denise, reporting to John Wyatt, what are the, with external relations, and be that conduit that would go to these, to the governor's office and things like that. So again, we're in transition, and of course, like my good friend and colleague Dede Gonzalez just mentioned, selective service requirements, some of those tactical regulatory relief that we are seeking out. I'm more than sure that TASFA is going to bring up the same issue. So that's just one example of perhaps many things that we would like to address. And of course, obviously, all of us in this body, we know the guidelines of this legislative subcommittee. But one thing I can tell you for sure, that we're going to be driven by a certain passion to articulate that we need more funding in our existing programs to fully fund. And I get it. We're not lobbyists, but we want to educate. So we want to look at, in the data that we get from working with Deshay and our team on our side, the data that identifies unmet need and building business cases, and again, educating how much financial need we have. And the other common theme is regulatory relief. And I just alluded to one example that Dede brought up. So I'll stop talking at this point, but Denise, thank you for giving my report. So I need all the help I can get. So enjoy talking to you all. And I need to give a shout out to Ed Caressly, because he was this was his brainchild, and I when he talked to me, I said, let's do it. So we're moving in that direction, Ed, and thank you for your leadership. And of course, Denise asked me to volunteer, but I kind of got the gist that she voluntold me to be in this committee. But nonetheless, I will salute the flag and serve accordingly. So thank you. That's my report.
Thank you so much, Arnold. I appreciate your willingness to be voluntold. So kind of giving you an overview of what the legislative subcommittee is going to do in the future, and how we're going to proceed. We appreciate Arnold's knowledge and his experience in our financial aid community, and be able to articulate what our community needs to the legislative subcommittee, as well as the TASFA legislative committee. And with that being said, if any one of you are interested in working with Arnold on this committee and brainstorming, send him an email, just kind of let us know what, if you're interested in pursuing this committee as well. Are there any questions or comments? That's funny, Millette. Raise your hand if Millette volunteered you to do something. I see several hands.
Hey, I will say that the pay is not that great, but it's very rewarding.
That's very, very true. Very true. Okay, so at this point in time, would you guys like to take a break for about 10 minutes? I'm seeing head nods. So hit thumbs up. You want to take a break? Deshay, about a 10-minute break. Are we good with that?
Yes. We'll
okay, it is. Go ahead.
I said we'll come back within, let's say 10, was it 10:15? Is that what everyone has? So
that's
10:25. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let's take a break for 10 minutes, and we'll see you at 10:25. Okay. Welcome back. I do need to reestablish our quorum since we are virtually meeting. So if you're Ed.
Here.
Deshay.
Here.
Robert.
Here.
Cecilia.
Here.
Stephen.
Here.
Jackie. Trivian.
Here.
Joseph. Thomas. I see you. I see that hand. Victoria.
Here.
Millette. Rochelle. Joy. Bridget.
Here.
Dee Dee.
Here.
Holly.
Here.
Arnold.
Here.
Ben.
Here.
Shauna.
Here.
Jace.
Here.
Sal.
Here.
Gilbert.
Here.
Oh, thank you. Let me circle
Sorry
back.
about that. I'm having mute button issues.
No problem. Jackie.
Here.
Jackie. Thank you. Joseph. Millette.
Here.
Rochelle.
Here.
Joy. Okay, so it looks like we're just missing Joseph and Joy. I think that still gives us a quorum. Is that correct, Deshay? Okay, so we'll go ahead and go on through with our next agenda item, and that is our TASFA update. Robert, can you give us an update on that?
Sure. So I don't have any recommendations of feedback, but I do have some information to share about TASFA. We had a very successful conference at Georgetown in October. We had over 250 paid attendees. This is somewhat close to what we typically have in a conference. We typically have about 300 to 300 people attend. So we were pretty much up there. During the conference, we inducted Carolyn Jones into the Textbook Hall of Fame. Some of you know Carolyn. She worked with this committee, especially with the FAAC subcommittee. Yeah, we inducted her to the Hall of Fame. Also, during the conference, we raised over $3,000 for the Boys and Girls Club. Okay. And on November 1st, we started our year for the 21-22 TASFA board. We have dates for our board meeting. The first one will take place next week on the 13th and 14th. That will be in person in Corpus. The second meeting will be in February 22nd. That's going to be online. Our third meeting will be in Grapevine, April 21st and 22nd. And then our fourth one will be online July 18, and then our final meeting for the year will be in person at the annual conference in Corpus, October 4th to the 5th. Our volunteer forum is still active, so we want to encourage people to volunteer. We typically shut it down, but I asked Ben to leave it up for at least another through next week because we want to encourage more people to volunteer. We are making selections right now of the people that already have volunteered. We're going to put them into their committees so that next week at the board meeting, the committee chairs have there are folks that are going to be part of their committee, at least those who have volunteered as of date. But we want to keep the form active at least through next week. Other than that, that's all I have. You have any questions for TASFA?
Thank you so much, Robert. I appreciate that. Now we have our next agenda item is the school district feedback update. Ben and Shauna.
Morning. I don't know, Shauna, did you want to say anything first, or I can?
I'll go ahead and let you go.
Okay. Not a whole lot of updates, just talking with our district, just noticing the difference of having students in person for sure this year, and being able to make those aggressive efforts that they're trying to do with seniors. Really focusing on making sure they're acquiring those credits to graduation, and they're well underway into focusing on the FAAC applications. And but just feedback's been that having them in person is making a big difference as far as getting those complete. So hopefully that's results in positive numbers here as we finish out this year.
I would say we're experiencing mostly the same things. It is definitely easier to get students help applying for FAFSA, applying to college when they are actually in the building and you can access them when they're not virtual. I do know that we have a lot of students that do dual credit, and the ones that have gone back and done the face-to-face classes are just a lot more successful than the ones who are still trying to navigate the online courses through dual credit. I don't know if that's going up once they enter higher education as well, but ours struggle with online coursework through dual credit. So we work on that. And again, we just try to get as many students to apply as early as possible, but our continued issues from year to year, and I don't think it's going to be any different this year, are the kids who wait and apply in May, because no matter how long you work with them, they're filling out applications for FAFSA and they're filling out applications to colleges in May. So we're working on trying to get them to do that earlier, but that is our struggle.
Thank you, Ben and Shauna. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Bridget?
I think this might be an agenda item later. I think it's part of a rule, but the FAFSA-TASFA requirement for high school graduation, when it came out, we were concerned, that we would get a lot of questions and we're not. So are things going well with that and the high schools are handling that? Is there anything needed from the schools?
I mean, I can say from our perspective, the biggest thing is just the fact that we actually have to get every student to either complete the FAFSA now or to complete the opt-out form. And so I don't know that it's necessarily changed anything that we're doing as far as we're talking to every kid and we're working to complete the FAFSA or they're doing the opt-out form because they say they're not going to college. They're entering the military, they're going straight into the workforce through our career programs and those types of things. So I think just because our counselors, our college and career advisors were really already helping students complete the FAFSA and helping students complete the TASFA, it's just maybe more volume now, but they don't have different questions about it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'd say, Bridget, too, we've kind of used some of our local university or community college partners to assist with some of those meetings, and they've even come out if we have those financial aid evenings to help parents fill out the application. Part of the issue is, that targets those kids that are interested and wanting to get in. A lot of times the kids that that's not on the top of their list. Those are the tougher ones that we have to kind of make those efforts to get into. But I think what happens is the counselors in the high school collaborating with those university or community college advisors or financial aid reps kind of helps them learn the process a little bit more, so then they can follow up and target those kids that are sometimes hard to get to meetings, or parents that we have a hard time coming to those types of events.
I know from our standpoint at Panola, I have my FAFSA nights have quadrupled. The month of November, my home nights were Wednesday and Friday. Otherwise, I was at schools through the whole month of October. And I know that a lot of you have experienced that as well. Ed, you had a question?
In many ways, it was the same question that Bridget had asked about, just, how are things going with the students filling out the FAFSA, and we've done, a number as well, and gone out, even done some things where during the day made ourselves available at schools, and, counselors were bringing groups in. The thing that I noticed, and it's, again, I think it is to the, the comment made, it's not necessarily anything different. It's just the volume has increased, and it's especially those students who are in unique situations. Either parents are resistant or unable to provide FAFSA information. The student is, kind of possibly, in a situation where a dependency override is appropriate and everything. And, those, I mean, just seeing, and I don't know if it's, again, more of those. I think it kind of is, because it is possibly engaging some students who maybe wouldn't choose to be engaged. I think that could be a positive thing, that they see some opportunities, that they don't. And I think that's what this is all about. But, just wondering, are there ways we could better provide resources and tools to help counselors, even help financial aid administrators, kind of navigate these unique situations? And, to better than assist students. I think there's some opportunity there. I think the other thing that we've observed in just is the idea of an understanding of why this needs to be done and who is it that's making this happen. I mean, however it wants to be characterized. And I think counselors have, at the high schools have taken a lot of grief that, parents and students are blaming them or blaming the school. Even, I've heard they're blaming colleges and universities that they're forcing this. And so continuing to communicate why this is being done. And, I think the belief that this will achieve some opportunities, not only for individual students, but really advance the goals of the state. I think continuing to communicate that, would be beneficial. But given the fact this is kind of a new thing, I think it's gone pretty well. And I think, like so many other things that are new, it will just become commonplace, in the future, and students will just know, hey, this is just, part of what we do. And I think schools will have learned from, kind of how they've done things, how they can do it better to meet this additional requirement and responsibility that now, that not that they haven't had it before, not that it hasn't been embraced before, but now it is a hard, fast requirement, not just the right thing to be doing. So
I will say to what you were saying about parents complaining, pushback, that kind of thing. We have not had as much of it as what I initially anticipated we might. And I don't know if that's because we tried to get ahead of it and we put out information about it being a new graduation requirement well in advance and started notifying people. And we gave that information about like kind of where it came from. And then also the additional statistics of, students who complete FAFSA are more likely to actually enroll in and go to college, and that type of stuff. And we tried to start getting that out early. So I don't know if that helped us or not, or if it just hasn't hit us yet, all of the complaints and the pushback, and if that's just coming. But
yeah. And again, my observation is, again, schools that have really embraced this and have really taken on the challenge, I think they've seen success. I think there, other schools that are just trying to, get stuff done. And now this is one more thing. And so, again, whatever can be done with, what are the best practices and the ways to help make this happen, and success stories, about, hey, this is how we did it. And, you might want to try, and here's, I think learning from it. I think there's some opportunity, whether that happens again in the circles of the high school counselors and how you share, but I think, how can we in the financial aid community as well be assisting with that? And, I think would be a good thing, because I think what I've picked up is very much this is the idea that each school is responsible for doing this, and it's not being highly regulated or dictated how it should be done. And I think that's the right, again, I don't think, high schools want, just like we don't want to be told this is how you have to do it and everything. On the other hand, I've always appreciated and gained from ideas, best practices of other schools to help me better do my job. And just, I think we have an opportunity in various ways to, to possibly do that, to continue to make this a positive thing, the right thing, not, become, a negative thing because, of a perception of, whatever it is out there that students' parents might have about, here it is, more things that we're being forced to do, especially in the climate of, people don't receive being forced to do anything real well right now. So,
Shauna?
I will say, Ed also mentioned something about all of the special circumstances and help with counselors doing that. I don't think that there is ever too much information and help and resources that you can put out there related to those special circumstances that would not be beneficial to anyone trying to help complete FAFSA, because it seems like no matter how many times we go through and we help students complete FAFSA, there is something new every single year that we have never encountered before. So, so any resources that can be put out and are available, I don't think we can ever do too much of that.
Yeah, and Ed, you talked about coming into the schools during the day. That's very impactful. It just, the title of having someone there when the student perspective is viewing someone that works at the college or university, they view things differently. It makes a difference. So that part's very helpful.
Gilbert?
Yeah, Ben or Shauna, I'd be curious. For our region, we put on about 50 to 60 FAFSA events in partnership with our school districts and colleges, and we try to target support to students and get the counselors to leverage Counselor Suite data. We also created a data hub for our region. How, for y'all's efforts, how helpful are the tools like the Counselor Suite for you all and for your counselors? Are you all using that, or are you targeting students or keeping internal lists and targeting those students using those internal lists? I'd just be curious, because on our end, I found that it's helpful, But sometimes the data lag, gets to the counselors, and they're collecting confirmation pages to try to make up on your end. Are you using those tools, or are there other strategies that you're deploying locally that might be helpful to our efforts and the efforts of others?
I will say that my counselors are definitely using the counselor suite. I know that they go into that to collect data a lot. I also know that it lags. I think they do a combination of things, because they know if they've helped start someone on a FAFSA or if they helped complete. So I know they are keeping track of that on their own as well, and not relying strictly on the counselor suite. But we also have students who go and do things on their own. And so the counselor suite from that perspective helps a lot. In our district, we have required students to submit, once they've kind of completed that FAFSA, we've required them to kind of print out and submit that final page that says, that gives you your, what's the word I'm looking for? Y'all know what I'm talking about.
Confirmation.
Yes.
Confirmation number.
Thank you. So they've had to print that out and submit it as to show that they have met their FAFSA requirement, and then we keep that on file. So I think we're probably doing multiple things, but they are definitely utilizing the counselor suite.
Yeah, similar. I know they're starting with internal listing first, but also using that counselor suite. And I know several are leveraging our digital online platform that we used last year for instruction, which is Canvas, to have those documents turned in, kind of like Shauna was talking about. So they found that to be a helpful tool, because they've got many students that are taking care of some of those things themselves, and saves them time. And they're able to do that, and then kind of helps them focus on who they need to.
Good. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we're definitely in a new transition, and I think all of us are navigating the waters really pretty well, considering I know in our area, some of the schools started last year with programs to go ahead and get the students used to thinking about following the FAFSA. I think in our area, one of the biggest challenges is the FSA ID. And I think that, with our parents, not necessarily with our students, but our parents, especially if they have siblings that have went to school prior, and mom and dad maybe aren't as technically savvy. And so the older student created the FSA ID and the parents maybe forgot. So I think there's some challenges that we all face with the technological part of it. But, for the most part, I think it's been a very positive experience. Okay, so the next part of our agenda is the Office of Student Financial Aid Programs, an update from Deshay, our Senior Director.
Thank you, Denise. Hopefully you all are able to see me now. I know earlier my camera was testing my heart to see whether or not my heart could take it. But just a really quick update what's happening within the Office of Student Financial Aid. We recently sent out some updated information regarding the governor's emergency education relief funds as related to any return of funds from that particular program or any interest that was occurred during that time. We've updated our return of funds form so we could add additional programs that use some of that GEAR money, reskilling and upskilling, the open educational resources. So those particular items were now added to that return of funds to make it very seamless and an easy way to send back funds to the coordinating board. So that information was released along with an updated version of our electronics funds transfer instructions to help schools know how to send back money to the agency. We also sent out a updated calendar for this fall semester, and we're also working on the spring 22 version of the calendar. So there were some changes to some deadlines on that fall calendar. We had to move back net price calculator as well as the user access information. So if you have an older copy of what was the deadlines for fall, definitely discard that, but be on the lookout for a notice letting you know of the upcoming deadlines happening during the springtime. We also are going to be releasing some information regarding something that came out of the special session for House Bill 133. It made changes to the Texas Education Code 54.354A, and that's benefits to survivors. The major change to that particular statute was it allows surviving children or child to be up to the age of 25 years versus the 18. So that's a huge change within that statute, and we're going to send out more formal information about it. One of the key things about that change is that it does not begin until any costs that are charged for the spring of 2022. So until then is when before those charges happen, you're still under 18, even though it's an immediately been impacted. You cannot actually use the current law until charges have incurred for spring 22. But within the information that we send out, we're going to be updating a lot of things we have online, as well as our instruction sheets, fact sheets, to help out schools who are, it's really public institutions who are handling that particular benefit, and to let them know kind of how to move forward with that particular change. Also, lastly, one of the major upcoming deadlines is the financial aid database for cycle 3. That particular deadline is December 17th. And I did get some updated information regarding the number of schools that still have yet to certify their file. So we still have about 88 schools that need to certify their file for cycle 3, as well as about 8 schools who still haven't actually submitted a file. December 17th is around the corner, literally next week. And so if you happen to be any one of those schools that are still working through reconciliation, we have a team of individuals that are here to assist and to help. And if you have questions, please reach out. We want to make sure that everyone is able to certify by the deadline. But given the high number of schools who have yet to certify, we anticipate still working up until the closure of the agency for the upcoming holidays. But I know a lot of you all will be going out because your schools will be closing soon. So I definitely highly recommend, reaching out to us if you still need some assistance for that. And, encourage your colleagues to do the same, just because we don't want anyone having to come back the first of the year still working on this FAAC cycle. We'll be moving into the next FAAC cycle for 22, based upon those tentative dates that Dee Dee talked about, going usually in February. So I don't recommend anybody continuing into this 21, finishing up the 21 FAACs at the first of the year. Reconciliation, I know, takes a long time, so highly encourage everyone who's still working on it just to reach out so we can help and assist you. But outside of those updates, I don't have any others out of the student financial aid programs area. Are there any questions from the committee members? Okay, well, don't see any hands raised, so I guess I got the next agenda item going into. Hopefully everyone's had the opportunity to look at the handout that was provided to you through email as well as online, and that is to go over proposed amendments to subchapter A and chapter 22. And I will just share my screen just so we can kind of go through those particular sections in case there's any questions that come up during that time frame. So I'll just kind of briefly go over what each section is recommending. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask and jump away. Sorry about that. Those are my own notes. And so you should have the very first one, which is the proposed amendment for section 22.3, student compliance with selective service registration. What we're doing here is with the elimination of the federal requirements, this particular section 22.3 is amended to eliminate reference to the federal process and to outline the administrative process for the state requirement through the submission of either a selective service statement of registration status or documentation from the selective service system demonstrating the applicant's selective service registration. You will see the underlying language, which is the added language here that represents that amendment. Questions or comments over that amendment for that section? So going into the next one, and we had talked about this.
One question, Deshay.
Millette, I just saw your hand.
Sorry, I'm late as usual. So I have a question about, and maybe I'm just not reading it properly, but I thought I had the same question when I read it a couple of days ago. So in section C, number 2, it says this section does not apply to an individual older than the maximum age at which an individual is required to be registered. So, and I know this is not the federal requirement, I get it, but I just want to make sure my brain can tell the difference between the two. In the federal requirement, if someone came to us when they were too old to register, but they didn't register when they should have, they still had a problem. That was still problematic. Does that make sense? So they couldn't fix it by registering, right? Because they were too old, but they still had to explain or, give us documentation about why they didn't register when they should have. But it sounds like here that if the individual comes to us when they already are over the age, then we don't even have to get a statement. I mean, it just doesn't apply to them. Is that correct? The intent? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
A good question.
Thank you.
And I'm glad that you are reading it as such. So,
well, someday we will stop comparing it to the federal rule, but we're not there yet. So, thank you.
No problem. Any other questions before I move on to the next section, based upon how you're reading the new language? Okay. Going into section 22. Oh, any other question? I missed that. Dee Dee.
Sorry, it was just a clarification statement. It doesn't appear to be something that changed, but I know for me when we talked about it before, just to make sure that section where it says including federal funds or gifts, grants accepted by the state. So not just Texas grant or things funded specifically with state money, but our set-asides too, correct? We have to have selective service on our set-asides moving forward.
That is correct. So for some of y'all, if you recall, we did send out some updated information regarding the selective service registration that did discuss this specifically about exemptions or waivers, your set-asides, and kind of gave a breakdown of what it included or did not include. And that was sent out a few months ago. But yes, you are correct, Dee Dee.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more before I scroll down? Okay. Which is fine. We can always circle back. I'd rather hear what you all are thinking as you're reading it than not. We don't want to have something added that still isn't clear enough for others to understand as well. So moving into 22.6, which talks about the applying for state financial aid. As you will see, we're removing priority deadline for, and this particular section is just being renamed to applying for state financial aid. The biggest change, as we talked about much earlier in today's meeting, is adding the section regarding the language of the TASFA. And so I want to just kind of reiterate some of those points again, just to make sure that everyone understands the language that was added because of our Texas Education Code, which is in section 61.07762. It does require the coordinating board to adopt procedures that allow for an applicant to complete the Texas application for state financial aid, TASFA, through an electronic submission process. And so this, of course, will allow applicants to use the online TASFA regardless of any Texas institution of higher education they plan to attend. So what we've done for section 22.6 is amended it to require institutions of higher education to accept the data submitted through that newly developed online TASFA. And we broke it down, which was in B in 1, 2, 3, 4. So B 1, 2, 3, 4. We broke it down of each section to describe what that means. So, of course, going back to B1, it is just discussing what is TASFA. So breaking down what is TASFA and how it collects that information and what's outlined in Chapter 21, Subchapter B that talks about residency. Section B2 is describing the fact that this is an agency-sponsored online TASFA, which is the sole and acceptable version that institutions must accept. So there are no other versions of the TASFA that can be accepted, and TASFA is officially considered the state of Texas application, not only online, but also in section B3, it talks about it being a PDF version, which is more of the paper application. So an acceptable printable version of the TASFA is section B3, stating the same thing as B2, being the sole and acceptable version, whether that's online or through a printable version. Section B4 basically just describes the fact that institutions are not prohibited from requesting any additional documentation. So they may request supplement information from an applicant who submits a TASFA. So that, again, like I said, is the biggest change to that particular section 22.6, which would be the B1 through 4. Before I move down any further, just want to make sure there's no questions. And as it was mentioned earlier, anything you see in brackets just means that it will be removed from that section. So anyone from A1, 2, you'll see that we're removing that language that's talking about past prior academic years. And then section C is being removed of what prior deadline is to serve as a determination. So that's being moved from that section itself. Gilbert, I believe I do see your hand.
So two questions. One, on the, and sorry to go back onto the selective service, I just want to make sure I understood it correctly. So while the requirement for federal aid has removed the need for a student to register for selective service, we are still requiring that to receive state aid. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Okay. Second is, are we striking the January 15th deadline altogether as a priority deadline, or can an institution adopt their own internal priority aid deadline?
We're not striking the priority deadline as far as the state priority deadline. No, so that's not being struck through. It is still being used as the priority deadline. As far as an institution implementing their own internal priority deadline for other aid, that would be up to the discretion of the institution. But January 15th is still what we consider the state's priority deadline.
Okay, so in brackets here where the language related to priority deadline is being struck in section 4, that doesn't really impact provision 1. It's not saying, oh, here's provision 1, but we're striking this as a priority. We're removing your capacity to use the January 15th as a priority application date to receive assistance.
Right. This bracket right here, what is basically taking away. Yeah. Okay. You're referring to this one, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So this basically is taking away the fact that when we change it to January 15th, that was for that particular academic year. So it's taking away that particular language and moving it up here to A1 that then takes this information saying that the general academic teaching institution shall use January 15th. So it's removing it from this section here that's really entailing beginning at this certain time, that's January 15th, but instead, because that has already passed. So it's cleaning up the language more than anything. So it's cleaning up language and it's moving it upward versus into section 4. So it's being struck from section 4 to add language pertaining specifically more to TASFA, the application, than it is about the priority deadline. So
got it. That's sorry, I just wanted to make sure I understood.
No, I hope that just answers your question. It's just really removing that language and making it more clear, since we've already are way past the 1920 academic year when it actually changed over, and is moving it up to the first, like I said, A1, that is where you'll really read the January 15th is the priority application deadline. So no longer pertains in section 4. Section 4 is going to be more entailed about TASFA itself, the application pieces, not about the priority deadline. Oh, does that answer your question about what you're reading? Are you still?
It does. I was giving you the thumbs up. Thank you for clarifying.
Okay. No problem. Thomas, I want to make sure that I did see your hand. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to get a little clarification relative to a priority deadline. Are we referencing that all eligible students up through January 15th should and are expected to be awarded state aid before any students who applied January 16th and beyond? I'm just trying to figure out how strict does the word priority mean?
So you are looking at your population of students first who did meet that prior year deadline. So yes, before you start going into anyone after that next after January 15th, you do want to make sure that you're looking at that population of students who applied before January 15th. But there are other components to that as well that you're also going to be looking for. But that is one of, at least to prioritize, let me say that, to prioritize your students. Charles, you wanted to add to that? I want to make sure I saw your hand flash up as well.
And I just wanted to clarify for everyone that this is more confusing on paper than it actually is in reality. It has to do with how we have to submit stuff to the Texas Register to delete old language and put new language in. Nothing is changing about the priority deadline. It's the same priority deadline that it's been, same expectation, still only applies to general academic teaching institutions. So nothing is changing in terms of expectations on this. The change in the language is purely just because we needed to have a priority deadline section and a TASFA section. So my apologies that this is seeming to cause some confusion.
Thank you, Charles. Questions related to the other pieces of the section, or comments? Questions or comments related to section 22.6? Okay. And this last section really is just about updating the language in here as it relates to the maximum amount percentage and dollar amount. So coming out of the General Appropriations Act for the 22-23 biennium, we were able to alter the maximum percentage and dollar amount that an institution may transfer between Texas College Work Study programs and state grant programs. So the biggest change here has to do with changing of this to 25% or 60,000, whichever one is lesser of. So instead of 10% or 20,000, we just need to update the language coming from there to 25 or 60,000. And we just made it clear that if they're wanting to make any kind of transfer, it needs to be submitted to the institution by the annual deadline date that is being published by the agency. But outside of that, those are the major changes. And again, it impacts just the 3 grant programs and the college work study programs that are related to Texas College Work Study and mentorship programs. So that is kind of the biggest change out of all of that. And that goes into effect now. So if there are any transfers that need to happen in this current 22 academic year, it would be pertaining to the 25% or 60,000. So we're just needing to update the rule to reflect that. Questions or comments on that? So those are the 3 proposed amendments for those 3 sections in Chapter 22, Subchapter A, that are going to be going forward and put out in the Texas Registry for comments. If you have any questions or comments, let me know. If not, you have additional questions or comments once it's posted to Texas Registry, definitely feel free to make those comments as well at that time. And I will stop my sharing of my screen. And I believe that concludes my discussion of that particular agenda item, Denise.
Okay, thank you so much, Deshae. The next 2 items on our agenda are some positions that we have on this committee that we are actually have to elect. And what we'll do is I will describe the position. We will take nominations, we'll take discussion, and then we'll call for a vote. So the first position is the election of the vice chair. The vice chair is a 3-year commitment beginning with this year. So this would be year 1. And so you would be the vice chair. The next year, you would take over the chair responsibilities, and the year after that, you would be the past chair, and you would sit on the committee for the 3 years. You do help with preparation in agenda items and presentations if you have something that you would like to talk to the group about. Also, just prepare for when you become the chair of this committee. And I will say that I was extremely nervous about my first meeting, and Deshae and Jody are phenomenal to work with, and I do appreciate everything that they have done for me this year so far. The nerves are a little bit less. I can't say that I wasn't a little nervous that I was going to mess something up, but I do appreciate the fact that Deshae and Jody are the heavy lifters as far as our committee is concerned, and especially this position. So at this point, I would like to open the floor for nominations for the vice chair for beginning this year. Do we have anyone that wants to volunteer that thinks they might be interested in this position? Ask questions if you have additional questions. I'm sure we can, between Ed, myself, Deshae, and Jody, we'll try to answer your questions as best we can. So y'all all jump at once.
If not, Malett's going to be right and she'll voluntold someone. Ed, I think you had a question. Or nomination, maybe? Oh, you're on mute, Ed.
You're on mute, Ed.
Now I'm not, right? Yeah.
Right.
I'd like to nominate Rochelle Garrett to be vice chair.
Thank you. Any other nominations?
Dee Dee, did your hand go up because you were nominating yourself? I know I saw your hand.
I was gonna suggest Bridget Ingram, but I don't know if she's interested in that or not. I'm seeing a no. Okay,
I think Rochelle would be great. That sounds good, doesn't it?
I agree with that.
Any other nominations or discussion? So, Rochelle, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, I will gladly accept.
Okay, with the that being said, I do need to call for a second in the nominations.
I so move.
So moved by Arnold Cheho. And at this point, we're going to take a vote. And I think if everyone will just, now Jody, correct me if I'm wrong, and Deshay, can everyone just raise their hand? Like their little hand on the, to show confirmation?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. Okay, I am seeing an overwhelming majority. This is like unanimous. So with that, we will say that Rachel Garrett is now our vice chair for our Financial Aid Advisory Committee. Now everybody can put their hands down because we have another one. I'll wait till everybody gets through. Thank you so much, Rochelle. Our next position that we have to nominate for is for our TASFA subcommittee chair. Robert Marino has been our chair for several years, and he has rolled off with his role as TASFA president. And Robert, if you don't mind, can you just give us a brief description of what this position entails?
So what it comes down to is you have to work with Leah and also with the Claudette. Sorry, I'm sorry. I was thinking about the online task, but I didn't want to call it the virtual task. The virtual task subcommittee led by Claudette, and right now, of course, we have to get the virtual task up and running, so be ready for October, and then also make sure that the PDF task is updated according to somewhat match the FAAC. And I know there will be several changes coming up for next year, so this committee will really have to focus on making sure that the changes there applied to the task file are updated on the task file.
Thank you so much, Robert. So with that being said, I would like to call for nominations for the chair for the subcommittee for the task file. Okay, y'all. Don't make me voluntold.
Yeah, y'all are hurting my feelings. Nobody wants to work with me. I'm just kidding.
Oh, y'all don't hurt Leah's feelings now.
And again, this is for the paper form and the online. So it's an all-inclusive committee to help support and drive decisions on the TASFA. So it's a really good committee to be a part of, especially if you come from a institution that may be able to provide good input, or you have connections or resources and that kind of thing. So
So, Robert?
Well, Bridget, I'm going to nominate you since you were part of the task force subcommittee at one point.
How many year commitment is this one? One?
Just until your term ends, Bridget.
With this committee?
So as the subcommittee, just until your term ends.
So and the job is reporting back to this committee, kind of what Claudette's doing, or like, is
correct.
It Claudette? Okay. Okay.
Yes. So it's getting everyone together, talking about any recommendations you have, maybe implementing some of those things and coming back to the larger committee here and giving those updates exactly how you described what you've seen other subcommittee chairs do, just providing updates on what you all discussed or what things have moved forward.
Would I be calling meetings, or I would just be attending what Claudette and Leah are doing?
You would be collaborating with the two. So all three together can determine, when is the best time to bring people together. So it'd be more of you partnering up with Leah and Claudette and you all coming together to determine what that looks like. So 9 times out of 10, you may just be asked to reach out to all the other committee members to let them know when you all are wanting to get together as a committee and, bring forth any agenda items. So you probably would love to talk to either Robert or Dee Dee and find out kind of what they have done, but it doesn't require you to do a lot of work necessarily, but it does require you to be present and to make sure that you can represent the smaller committee at the larger committee and just take forward the information that comes out of those meetings. And Leah can definitely describe or Robert can describe what and how they have, worked together during that time. Prior to the online versions, what I can say with the paper app, it was a little different, but because of the new addition to the online, it might just be slightly different in meeting times. Let me say that.
Bridget, so Leah and Claudette are great at keeping the pace of the project. So they'll be reaching out to you, to let you know, hey, this is what we need to plan a meeting, at this time frame because we need to take care of this. So they'll be working very closely with you. And as Deshae said, your part maybe just to reach out to the other members and keep them and send out the meeting notifications as such.
Okay.
You're already on the committee anyway, right, Bridget? You come in anyway, but
yes.
I understand the
Make
time
sure
commitment.
I knew what I was saying yes to.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's so collaborative at this point that, there's not like a one person driver of the committee. It's really more of just all coming together so that we're not making decisions in a bubble and making sure that we have institutional representation for sure. And so since y'all have, at your particular institution, y'all do have a lot of insight on the process and whatnot, I do think that you'd be very valuable as the chair.
Okay, sounds good.
So, Bridget, formally, are you accepting this nomination?
Sure.
Thank you so much. So now I'll call for the vote, and we'll do it the same way we did a while ago. All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, looks like, again, it is a unanimous decision. So thank you guys so much. I think we can all take our hands down now. Okay, so we have elected our vice chair as Rochelle Garrett, and we have elected our task force subcommittee chair as Bridget Ingram. At this point in time, I want you to turn your attention to the dates, the proposed meeting dates in our handouts. And please, everyone, take a minute to kind of look at your calendar. Make sure there are no glaring conflicts in those dates. I will say at this point, while you're looking at your calendar, we are planning on continuing this year in the virtual environment. a couple of reasons that we're continuing in this environment. One of the reasons is we've had 100% participation throughout the virtual environment on this committee. And we do appreciate everyone's willingness to log in and participate and be engaged. And I think as far as a virtual environment, this is probably one of the most productive meetings that I've seen in a virtual environment. So I really appreciate everyone's comments, everyone's participation, and just being engaged and being present for these meetings. And another reason is the coordinating board is moving, and they're going to be relocating, and so we're not sure about the spacing there yet. So once they're settled in and we can kind of see where we are, because these meetings do actually take place at the coordinating board offices. And so we'll just have to kind of see what the future holds as far as meeting places and spaces once the coordinating board is settled in their new building. So with that being said, we're looking at March 3rd, June 2nd, September 8th, and December 8th. Do I have any discussion or comments on these dates? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to assume that these are okay. So Deshay, do we have to have a vote on these dates?
No, if everyone is agreeing with saying that there's no issues or conflicts between those dates, then we will move forward here at the agency, and we will send out the normal calendar invites, as well as make sure to do our logistics for these 4 dates.
Thank you so much. Also, I do want to kind of reiterate the fact that we are on live, and it's so important that all of us, be present and be engaged. And I do appreciate the fact that all of you are very willing and to do that and to be engaging and to be on camera. I'm going to kind of skip down a little bit, and I'm going to talk about the expense reports while we're talking about meeting times. And Jody is going to send each one of us an expense report. This includes travel time, preparation time. Obviously, we don't have a lot of travel time right now, but we do need to make sure that your time is logged and how much time you're spending on preparation, how much time you're spending in the meeting. And we need to get those back to Jody as quickly as possible. These are reports that go to the board reports for this committee up the chain. So we just need to make sure that we get those back to Jody timely, and that her and Deshay don't have to chase us around to get our reports. So at the end of our meeting, Jody's going to send the report out. And if you would, just take a few minutes and just jet those right back to her. And that way that we don't ever have to think about it again until the next meeting. And that way they don't have to chase us down. So that would be really appreciated if you could handle that once this meeting is adjourned. So on our last week, most of us probably sat through some FSA virtual sessions for the FSA conference. And I just wanted to give us a few minutes to kind of debrief, so to speak, on some things that you found that were extremely interesting or extremely not interesting, or just kind of just what your thoughts were. I will start by saying I was very, very disappointed that they did not waive verification in V1 for next year. I was really in hopes, because I think Trevor kind of teased us a little bit at the SWASFR conference and said, be sure and tune into that verification session. And I was thinking, oh, they're going to tell us. They're going to say, oh, we're just going to waive it for this next year too, but they did not. So I was a little disappointed in that. But what about you guys?
I find it really difficult to go to virtual conferences. And as you all know, Department of Education conferences are somewhat hard to attend already. So I just hope they bring back some part of the in-person, because it's just really hard. And I don't think you get the same interaction and information needed, unless they're in person. So I only watched a few, and then my calendar starts to fill up on other things, and it's hard to kind of get all you need out of it.
I agree, Bridget. I think it was even had they had live sessions, virtually, right? That to me would have even been much, dramatically better. I mean, all of us have attended something in the last couple of years that's been virtual, but we're still in the same time. We're still they're presenting, we're interacting. It's all, and I know they did the interactive or the real-time Q&A, but I just don't, it's just not the same. And I don't know what the benefit or the impetus was to do it that way, to pre-record everything, other than, maybe just technical considerations. It's easier because you don't have to contend with, a live person doing something crazy. So I don't know, but I completely agree. I found it, I have always valued the federal conference. I think it's dry, no doubt. But it is, you can't get much better than talking to the guy who invented NSLDS. I mean, it's like there is something about getting it straight from the horse's mouth. So I think it has value. I think it continues to have value for the community. And if this is the only way we can get it, then that's what we'll do. But I agree. I think it was much less effective and sort of meaningful, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I can totally agree with you about the live sessions. That to me is when I know that somebody's talking to me face to face, so to speak, even through a camera. I feel like that even the Q&As could be much more energetic during the middle of the session. So I agree with that as well.
And I will say from my perspective, it's very hard to engage in something when you have all the other distractions that an office brings. People walking in and wanting to ask just one question. It's hard to stay engaged in those I'm going to call them webinars, because that's really what it was to me, was sitting through a webinar. So.
Any other comments, questions, or complaints? Might as well throw those complaints in there too.
Well, I felt like the content that they offered this year was superior to what they did the year before, although the year before was rather impromptu for everybody to do things virtually. I'm sure that wasn't their game plan going into it. But, the year before I had bragged up the FSA conference to my staff, saying, this is really cool. It's good stuff. You get to hear, from the source. And then the 2020 conference kind of left all of my staff looking at me like, dude, you have no taste. What is this? What is the problem? So this year I didn't brag it up quite as much, but I did encourage them strongly to participate, and several of them did, and they were appreciative because they felt like it wasn't the same as live. And I totally concur with everything each of you just said, but it at least had content that was relevant to them. It was subjects that were, pertinent to our daily lives, more so than what it was the year before. And for that, I was appreciative.
Yeah, my vice president invited other areas on the campus to attend, and they actually feel sorry for us. They said
as well they should, Cecilia.
Oh yeah, rightfully so.
They don't want to participate in another one.
That's awesome. Any others? I just wanted to give us a little time to kind of just chat a little bit. Ed, what's your comment?
My only thing is just with this whole FAFSA simplification and the changes. The nice thing was we got a couple years. I don't need to start thinking about this too much, but it's big, and I felt again as it was talked about, it's big. With not only just how does it affect what we do, but with the state and all that. And I think the biggest thing is I sure hope they get their act together with the IRS and the other agencies with all the exchanges, and that all works and the information is correct, because it all hinges on, what we've been talking about for years. They have this information already. Why can't they just, share that information and, and the majority of what needs to happen. But, I have, I guess, reservations again, given just everything that's happening in our world today, despite it being government, that, they're going to pull it off, and they're going to be able to, with the security issues that exist, as well as just the data exchanges and the validity of data and all of that, that it actually is going to work. And so if it doesn't, then there's a whole idea that, simplification doesn't mean easy for us, will potentially be a theme for, a few years from now. And I'm not that close to retirement. So that I think kind of is it was a little bit of a takeaway from kind of a little bit of what I got to take advantage of and plan to get more of those sessions. And that's the one thing I do like. Those sessions are available immediately. They're there now. They're at access versus you go to the conference and you're waiting months for it to show up, and it's clunky and everything. I mean, they've, the electronic presentation, the availability to resources and things, and this year seemed to be, be good, unlike I think some of the issues with trying to do it the first time. So I appreciate that.
For sure. I think one of the things that simplification is one of the takeaways I had is going to make it really difficult for us to explain to a student how they came up with that number. I mean, it's hard enough to explain the EFC, but explaining how they got the student aid index, that's going to be a challenge, I think, for us as aid administrators. Any other comments, questions, or complaints? Okay, so with that, we'll just move forward. Let's talk about maybe some topics that you guys would be interested in hearing some information on for this setting for future meetings. What is something that you think that would be very relevant for our whole group that we could get someone to come in and present for us?
I would personally be very interested to get a better understanding of how effective our aid programs are towards the point of graduation. If we might be able to get some additional data, some information relative to of the students who received this fund, here's the kind of graduation rate that we were seeing of the students who got this fund, here's what we were seeing, what kind of an impact did it make for year-to-year retention and or all the way through to graduation. I would welcome seeing that. It's one of the things here on my campus where when we have conversations about our institutional aid, it's very helpful for me to be able to say, look, here is the direct correlation between assistance that students are receiving and the general outcomes that we're looking for. And to be able to show not just how I'm doing here on campus with our institutional funds in that way, but to also be able to piggyback as a reinforcement how strong the state programs are towards doing that exact same thing. It just gives one more example that adds to my case when we're looking at trying to expand options for our students. So if we could go down that path at some point, I'd welcome that information.
Thank you, Thomas. Great idea. Robert?
So I want to add to what Thomas suggested, not just, the students who receive financial aid, but compared to the students who do not receive financial aid. Is it possible to do a comparison between those who receive financial aid, those who do not, and compare the metrics? I think people are going to be surprised at what they see. At least I was here when I did that here at San Jack.
Good. Arnold?
Denise, probably one of the things that I'd like to see is maybe bring somebody in externally from and state the demographies, the demographic trends of the state, how the demographic movement is going, the shifting, I think in Texas we've been blessed with enrollment increases because of demography. We don't have the problems perhaps in other parts of the country, like in the Northeast, where their enrollments are going down. But where I'm heading with this is also coupled with the fact that now we require every student in Texas to file a FAFSA for graduation. And I applaud those efforts, but also as aid administrators, we have to examine our capacity to serve that influx or that increase of FAFSAs coming in and processing. And that's where I'm going with all this demographic trends, increases in enrollment, and the ability for us as aid administrators to continue to build the capacity, and the capacity to serve that market. We're already, and maybe I'm out of line here saying this, but I think the majority of us can say that we're understaffed and overworked, and our jobs are not 8 to 5. We're burning the midnight oil. So how can we build capacity? We want to be compliant. And that's why, we want to build capacity. We want regulatory relief. I was upset also, Denise, like you, that I had anticipated that verification regulatory relief was going to be with us this next year. I mean, why would you start a race and we're just warming up and then you pull the plug and say, Arnold, the race is already over? So I don't know if I'm making sense, but in terms of agenda items, I would like to see somebody coming in and giving us a broader strategic picture of what the state is, how the state's moving, and how are we going to serve that tremendous market. And to Thomas' point is, what impact are we going to have? Time to degree, graduation rates, retention rates. It's not good just for us to recruit somebody to our campus and then they have to leave us because we don't have the capacity to turn those financial aid and scholarships awards in a faster fashion, So anyway, that's my spiel.
Great. Thank you. Ed.
I would really be interested in, what we could learn from whatever this post-COVID world is whenever we reach it. But thinking, we're coming off of a year where we've had an infusion of additional resources to help students, and that ends, come the end of this spring semester. And, I guess just, at a lot of levels of how are students going to be thinking about that going forward and what expectations they have, how are schools going to respond with trying to do what we've been trying to do with less resources. I think at other levels of, is there any evidence that these dollars actually, made a difference and everything? And, are there things we can leverage from that to say, hey, with additional, resources, look what happens, and that may be an argument for this next future of infusion of additional resources for higher ed at the federal and state level, and just but are there people out there that have more time than I do, or maybe that's their job, that they've been thinking about that stuff and they have, been trending and researching and everything. And, could they bring that to help us, think at various levels, but really, I think at a lot of level of where we work with, there's not going to be students just getting a check in their bank account a couple times a semester or whatever it is that schools have done, in addition to the financial aid that they've qualified for. And so I'm concerned about the expectation we've created, and I don't think the expectation is going to go away, but the ability to respond apparently will be going away. I mean, I don't see another infusion. So.
Very good point. Gilbert.
Maybe this complements Arnold's suggestion, but I would be curious, just from Charles's presentation, to hear a future update on the strategic framework or the reconceptualization of state aid programs. I would assume that to some extent that's going to take into account current aid policy and outcomes related to student aid policy in terms of completion, in terms of awards. But I'd welcome that kind of consideration as obviously that should inform the future strategy. And maybe that's more of a June of next year. I'm not sure how much progress they'll make by March, but I'd be curious about that.
Thank you so much. Ed, did you have another idea?
No, I did not. My hand has not gone away, so maybe now. There you go.
Okay. Anyone else have some topics that they would love to see us discuss here in this committee? Okay, we've got some great topics to Shay.
I have Gilbert, you had one. Yeah, just one more, and maybe it relates to the student aid index. I think Ed mentioned that. We had supported the FAFSA, the Federal Aid Simplification Act on our end, but I'd be curious, how does that impact us from a state perspective? So, is it just translating EFC into this new student aid index? But I know there's other changes as well. So I'd be curious to know what the impact of that is for us.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think all of us that's kind of a burning question. How's it going to impact us when it actually happens with that state, the student aid index? And what is that really going to mean for our students, and how we're going to explain that? And there's a lot of questions that we don't have a whole lot of answers to at this point. So that'd be a great topic as well. Okay. What else? Okay, well, we're coming up on about lunchtime, and I'm sure you guys are hungry. And I so appreciate everyone's time and everyone's contribution to this committee. This is really awesome, and I really appreciate you taking your time and participating and show up and be engaged. That's kind of the theme, and because we can't make change unless we voice our change, what needs to change. So I appreciate you guys. And at this moment in time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved by Millette.
Second
by Arnold. Thank you. Okay, all in favor say aye, and we'll see you next time.
Aye.
Thank you all. Have a great,
Thank you. And happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
You too.
See.